brown berets come into my high school, my history class, and read Lalo Delgado's stupid America. And I sat there with my head gonging in the back of the room, sitting there, throw that out. And like, I didn't really care. But I'm sitting there with tears in my eyes thinking, man, I do not want to die with 10,000 masterpieces hanging only from my mind.
It was beautiful, wasn't it? Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tanya Alvarez, and today I'll be talking to you about Ni de aquí ni de allá, Lorna D. Cervantes' embrace of the Chicana identity in a Chicano poem. Come follow me to learn more and to hear the poem from Lorna D. Cervantes. In a 2007 interview with Sonia Gonzalez, Lorna D. Cervantes said that she wrote her poetry having this vision of some little Chicana in San Antonio going, scanning the shelves like I used to do, scanning the shelves for women's names or Spanish surnames, hoping she'll pull it out, relate to it. She was talking about a girl like me, because that is exactly what happened. During my freshman year, I was in the library writing an essay for my EH 102 class. While taking a study break, I happened to find a book of collected Chicano poetry and ended up checking out 5 books on Chicano literature. Before I continue, I do want to say that I will be using the terms Chicano and Chicana because those are the terms Lorna D. Cervantes uses. Now, the term Chicanx is used. One of these was a collection by Cervantes, whose poetry about the struggle with language and identity spoke directly to me. We shared a sentiment of being ni de aquí, ni de allá, neither from here nor from there. It is a common phrase used by Chicanos to express our sense of dislocation. While it has been used as a negative phrase, Chicano writers like Cervantes have reclaimed this phrase as positive. By examining Cervantes' biography and the importance of Spanish language and Chicano culture, I plan to analyze how Cervantes claims her Chicana identity by dismantling the notion of English as a superior language in her poem, A Chicano Poem. In 1954, Lorna D. Cervantes was born into an artistic fifth-generation Mexican-American family. Fifth generation meaning her Mexican ancestors immigrated 5 generations ago, and is also Chumash from her grandmother's side. At 5 years old, Cervantes moved into her grandmother's house with her mother and brother after her parents' divorce. As a response to racism against Mexican Americans, Cervantes' parents decided not to teach their children Spanish, hoping to keep them from being bullied for having an accent. Even after her parents' divorce, Cervantes and her brother were raised only speaking English. At 19, she joined her brother on a trip to Mexico City with the Teatro de la Gente in 1974. There, she read Barco de Refugiados, or Refugee Ship. And soon, the poem was in a Mexican newspaper that spread to other newspapers and journals in Mexico and the U.S. In 1981, Cervantes published her first collection, Emplumada, which featured Barco de Refugiados, Refugee Ship. In Emplumada, Cervantes wrote heavily about her experience as a Chicana. Over the next 32 years, Cervantes published Cables of Genocide, Poems on Love and Hunger in 1991, Drive, the first quartet, in 2006, Ciento, 100 word love poems in 2011, and Sueño in 2013. While there are many definitions of Chicano, nobody has been able to agree on a set definition. A Chicano or Chicana is someone who was born in Mexico but moved to the U.S. at a young age, like me. Or someone who was born in the U.S. with Mexican heritage. There have been many studies conducted identifying various linguistic backgrounds and language systems that help us understand the language choices available to a Chicano writer. Gary Keller analyzes how Chicano writers tend to switch between languages using, quote, one language for the commerce, education, and public duties in general, the second language for falling in love, being angry, having a good time, family life, and so on. This is known as code switching. Keller does not specify which language is used for each of these categories, which means there can be many combinations of the linguistic styles. Jennifer Survey Roberts argues that language is its own entity that morphs into an identity. Just as DNA cannot be physically separated from a person, no es posible separar la identidad de la lengua que habla. In other words, it is not possible to separate language from identity. The intentional use of language gives Chicano writers agency over their own narrative and the power to dismantle the American idea that one language, English language, should predominate over other languages. The U.S. has a history of racism, which has been demonstrated by branding Spanish as the language of the poor, of the weak, of the outsider. The English-only movement that began in the late 20th century is evidence of this. This movement attempted to increase English language learning of immigrants so that they would assimilate into U.S. culture and leave their Mexican culture behind. This movement came into fruition in the 1980s, when more than 20 states added English as the state's official language into their constitutions. If anything, this English-only movement has intensified more recently. Arizona's 2010 SB 1070 bill banned the teaching of Mexican American studies in high schools and universities of Arizona because the state government considered it to be brainwashing and ethnic chauvinism. Arizona claimed to be protecting the identity of its American citizens, as if there were a specific mold to being American. In reality, the dominant culture views the Spanish language as a threat to national identity. These attitudes foster prejudice, which has forced many Mexican Americans to drop the Mexican from their self-definition. This would explain why Cervantes' parents refused to teach their children Spanish. Noemí Quiñones categorizes Chicano writers into waves. She places Cervantes in the first wave of Chicana writers. The writers from this wave are characterized by, quote, a desire for personal transformation and sustained in a political consciousness gained through social action that challenges dominant discourses. Quiñones points out that these writers, quote, tend to adopt and modify the language and literary tools of the dominant culture, end quote. She compares Chicanas to La Malinche, the infamous Aztec betrayer. La Malinche is a derogatory nickname for Malintzin, who served as an interpreter for Hernán Cortés during the colonization of Mexico. Without her help, it would have been almost impossible to conquer the Aztec tribes. She was baptized as Marina and had Cortés's children. Today, she is seen as a traitor by many Mexicans for helping Cortés. Quiñones compares Chicanas to La Malinche because their prominent use of English is seen as a betrayal to their Mexican origins. Rather than seeing this as a betrayal, Quiñones rewrites La Malinche and Chicano writers' role in their communities as first interpreters for their culture. 30 years after her collection, Cervantes wrote a Chicano poem from her latest collection, Swing, in response to Arizona's SB 1070 bill. She was among the authors whose books were banned. In this poem, Cervantes references instances in where the Spanish and English colonizers have tried to strip natives of their history and culture. By using religious and political language, Cervantes parallels our ancestors' experience to Chicanos' experiences today. She demonstrates that Chicanos are ni de aquí ni de allá, because our two identities, Mexican and American, cannot be separated. By writing the poem in English and only having a few words in Spanish, Cervantes is able to address her oppressors and demonstrate the effects that oppression has had. Her political intent becomes clear in the poem's subtitle, For Libro Traficante. The term Libro Traficante is a play on narcotraficante. A narcotraficante is a drug dealer that smuggles drugs from one border to another. In response to Arizona's laws, banned Chicano authors toured across different states with their banned books to protest in front of institutions. This is the first sign of code switching that Cervantes uses in order to reclaim her culture's history as part of her identity. She dismantles this negative stereotype that Chicanos are narcos and uses libro to claim that Chicanos are intellectual. Now let's hear from Lorna de Cervantes.
They tried to take our words, steal away our hearts under their imaginary shawls, their laws, their libros, their líbranos, señor.
The first three lines reference all three experiences of American natives, Mexican natives, and Chicanos. The Spanish and English colonizers, along with Arizona officials, tried to oppress by taking away their speech through laws. In the fourth line, Cervantes specifically emphasizes the oppression of the Aztecs through code switching. Spaniards used their libros, their books, in order to enforce their ideas onto the indigenous people. This stripped them of their own power, even though the Aztecs were advanced in all subjects. The Spaniards also used religion to control the Aztec people. Líbranos, Señor is taken from the Spanish translation of the Our Father in Catholicism. It translates to, deliver us. The rest of the prayer is, Líbranos, Señor, de todo mal, which translates to, deliver us from evil. Cervantes is thus identifying the evil as the conquistador. She is deliberately using Spanish here to express anger, which supports Keller's idea that Chicano writers use one language to express emotion and another to recount an event. Líbranos directly translates to liberate, which is the opposite of enslave. Instead of being liberated, the Aztecs were enslaved. Through this code switching, Cervantes also connects the past to the present. Like the historical oppressors, those who passed and supported the SB 1070 bill tried to take away the words of Chicanos. They tried to replace the libros written by Chicanos with the libros of the oppressor. The evil is not only the conquistador of the past, but also of the oppressors of the present.
They tried to steal our languages, our grandmothers' packets, our magma cartas for their own serfs. They razed the land and raised the Constitution, declared others 3/5 a human being, snapped shackles, cut off a foot, raped our grandmothers into near-mute oblivion. They burned the sacred codices, and the molten goddesses rose anew in their flame.
Cervantes moves from the Spaniards to the American colonizers. By getting rid of the language and implementing their language as dominant, the colonizers have secured control over the natives. Cervantes alludes to the Magna Carta, the Great Charter of Freedoms, a document that guaranteed the rights of individuals. But the state of Arizona tried to deny Chicanos the right to speak Spanish, to learn about both sides of their history. Cervantes replaces magna with magma, because Chicanos are a crucial part of the foundation of this country, but they go unacknowledged. Cervantes juxtaposes raised and raised. In order to build a nation, English colonizers had to destroy the one already in place. Then they created laws such as the 3/5 Compromise to diminish the power and rights of groups they deemed threatened. By burning the texts of natives, they tried to erase our history. Like the phoenix that rises from the ashes, the molten goddess represents present-day Chicanos that have risen and continue to fight against oppression.
They tried to take our words, give us the Spanish translation for pain, serve us the host of fallow fields on a china plate, stripped us of the germ and seed, fed us in a steady diet of disease and famine.
Instead of using the word dolor, Cervantes asked for the Spanish translation of pain. This illustrates her struggle to express her emotions in the Spanish language. The oppressors fed natives animals infected with parasites on a plate that was imported from China. This is a reference to imperialism and demonstrates the history of continued oppression. Another way oppressors dealt with minorities was to halt their reproduction in order to stop population growth. By bringing in diseases from the old world into the new world, masses of the natives died and left survivors vulnerable to the colonizers.
Where is the word for tomorrow to the dead? When is our kingdom come? They claim our reclamations, our reparations, a thing of our imaginations. I discover this truth to be self-evident. In the beginning, we were here. I declare us here today and speak.
Again, Cervantes is asking for a translation for a word, in this case, for the dead. Those who have died at the hands of past oppressors. Cervantes turns to the Our Father once more as she asks, when will our people have power over their own identities, over their own rights? She brings the audience back to the present as she realizes that the present oppressor wants to strip Chicanos of their power to reclaim their own identity. She uses the language of the Declaration of Independence and of Genesis from the Bible to reclaim the power of tongue that her ancestors had before she did. Cervantes declares her independence and gives herself ownership over her heritage, by stating that Chicanos existed from the beginning of creation. She reminds us that we were created equal. She tells the present oppressors that their God created us too, and for some, their God is our God. She gives herself the right to share her own story. She embraces her Chicana identity in the midst of oppression.
We had the brown berets come into